My name is Janice and Lisondra, and I am a second-year student in Mindanao State University at Naawan, taking up the course Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Mathematics. So for today's video, we will going to have a tutorial on how to use the Google Classroom in teaching as one of the online resources. So without further ado, let's start our discussion. So the Google Classroom is one of the example of online resources. Actually, there are different online resources, but in this tutorial video, we will focus on how to use the Google Classroom. There are different features that a Google Classroom has to offer. But before we proceed into that different features, is that we must first define and get to know what is a Google Classroom. So what is a Google Classroom? A Google Classroom enables teachers to create an online classroom area in which they can manage all the documents that their students need. Another definition, it is a free blended learning platform developed by Google for schools that aims to simplify creating, distributing, and grading assignments. So the primary purpose of the Google Classroom is to streamline the process of sharing files between teachers and students. So we have already know what is a Google Classroom and its primary purpose. So now let's start our tutorial on how to use a Google Classroom. The different steps, and get to know the different features of the Google Classroom has to offer. So how to use a Google Classroom? When we say a Google Classroom, an online platform of our classroom. So let's get to know how to use the Google Classroom and what are the different features that a Google Classroom has to offer. So actually, there are two ways on how to access a Google Classroom. So the first way is to search it into our browser, googleclassroom.com, and the second way is to install an app, a Google Classroom application, and just open it using your Google account. So the first step that you must consider in creating a Google Classroom is to create your class. So in creating your class as a teacher or a future educator, is that you will depend on how many classes that you have handled. So in a Google Classroom, you can free to add or to create one or more classes depending on how many classes that you have handled as a teacher. So in the Stream tab of the Google Classroom is that you can see a plus sign. So that plus sign, you will click that one, and then it will bring you to a two feature. So it is to create a class and also to join a class. Since the first step is to create your class, then you will click the create class. Once you click that create class, then it will bring you into this feature. So in this feature, you will type your class name, your section, your building, and your subject. So for example, in this tutorial, I use Miss Lisondra's Calculus class as my class name, Math 2A, Room 143, and Math 051 as my subject. And after filling up all the necessary or the required information, then click the create button. Once you have clicked the create button, it will direct you to your class stream or your stream tab or your default tab of the Google Classroom that you have created. So you have already a Google Classroom, Miss Lisondra's Calculus class, for example, and you will see the section or the year level Math 2A. And then afterwards, after finishing or after creating your Google Classroom, you can now start to add your students. So in able to add your students, you just need to click the People tab. So just click the People tab at the bottom. So once you have clicked that People tab, you are going to add your students. So this will be the feature if you have clicked the People tab. So in this feature, you gonna invite your students. So you just need is to email your student. So for example, my student name is Mr. Eric James Ryan Borja. So I got his email address and then send him the link invitation of my Google Classroom. So once Mr. Eric James Ryan receive the invitation, if he accepts that invitation, then he will be directed to the Google Classroom. So Mr. Eric James Ryan is my student. So actually, you can add all your students as many as you can, as long as it is your students in that particular subject. Also, another way to add your students is through the class codes. So this is the another way on adding your students. So you can give the students the class codes, and then they will themselves enter your Google Classroom. So for example, in my Google Classroom, in the Google Classroom, you can see create class or join class. So as a student, you are joining a classroom. So you're gonna click a join class. So once you have clicked that join class, then it will be directed to this feature. So you will see the class codes. Your teacher will be the one who will provide the class code. So those who create the Google Classroom will provide the Google Classroom code of his classroom. So for example, my Google Classroom code is RR4KPZ, and my students enter that code, so they will be directed to my Google Classroom. So once they have finished to encode or to type the Google Classroom code, just enter the join button. So once you have entered the join button, then you will be directed to my Google Classroom. So another feature that I want to highlight in this tutorial is changing the theme of your Google Classroom. So as a teacher or as the person who create the Google Classroom, you have the power, or you have the right to change the theme of your Google Classroom. So click the Customize tab or the Customize button. So once you have clicked the Customize button, it will directed to two ways on how to change the theme of your Google Classroom. So it can be through uploading a photo, or it could be selecting a theme in the Google Classroom. You can select any theme that a Google Classroom already prepared to you. So for example, I choose the blue theme, so I could choose anything in my Google Classroom, since I have already, or I am the one who changed or who create that Google Classroom. Afterwards, or another feature that I want to highlight into this tutorial is that you're right, or you have the power to create an announcement and attach an attachment. Just like a face-to-face class, you can also create an announcement. But in this platform, you're gonna create your announcement through your Google Classroom. In your default tab or stream tab, you can see share it with your class. So just click that one and you will be directed to this feature. So into this feature, you are typing your announcement to your students. So if once you have posted an announcement, then your students will see those announcements. So you can also add attachment to your post through the use of the Google Drive, or through the link, through the upload file on your mobile phones, or through a recorded video, or take a photo. Another feature that a Google Classroom has to offer to us is creating an assignment. So it is very realistic that a teacher is creating an assignment to his students or to her students. So for example, you are creating a calculus pre-test. So that calculus pre-test will be announced to your students, and you will add a description into it. So you're gonna say that analyze and solve the following functions using your prior knowledge, and so on and so forth. So another advantage of this is that you can put a score. So for example, I put in this announcement as 100 total points. and then I set the due date and the time limit that my students will be submitted this kind of assignment. So another also is you can add attachment to your announcement in creating your announcement. So you can have or you can attach a file into this announcement. So once you have posted that announcement, your students will see those announcements that you have posted since they are part of the Google Classroom. There are things that you need to create, or there are different features that a Google Classroom or a teacher can create through the use of the Google Classroom. We can create an announcement in regards to assignment, or we can post a question, or we can post a material that our students needs, reuse a post, and categorize our topic. So that's the different features or the different categories that a Google Classroom has to offer to us, and it is very, very, very important to know how to create them so that you will be equipped into this kind of application. In your Stream tab, you can find a Google Calendar. So what was the use of the Google Calendar? So the Google Calendar, once you click that one, you will see this kind of image. So this kind of feature. So you will see the different subject that you have handled, and you will see also the different assignment that you have assigned to your students, their dates, their due dates, and their time dates and their time due date. So you will see in your Google Calendar. So the Google Calendar will help you or guide you on the due dates that you have set to your students in your posted announcements. People tab is that you will see the teachers and also the students. This particular area is that you have, as a teacher or as a creator of the Google Classroom, you have the power to mute, to archive, or to delete your student. If you think if one of your student is not enrolled in your class and he has entered or she has entered your Google Classroom, then you have the power that you can remove that student. And also you can add student just click by just clicking the add student button. And then also you can add your associate teacher in this particular subject. So you can add any people that is being included in this particular subject as long as they are included. And also in this people tab, you can email your students. Another feature that a Google Classroom highlighted is the graded tab. So you as a teacher have the power to grade your students' output. So once your students have already handed in the assignment, and then you will have the power to grade them and then return them the scores. So for example, Mr. Eric James handed in the assignments that I have posted, then I have the power to grade Mr. Eric James' output and then to him the scores that corresponds to his output. The last feature that a Google Classroom that we will discuss is its class setting. So in the class setting, you can edit your class settings. So these are the details in the class settings. So in the class settings, you will see the class details. So if you think that there is a mistake in your class name, then you can edit your class name. You can edit also the section, the room, and the subject. So as long as if there is a mistake, then you can edit that one. So in the general setting, you can have managing your invite codes. So you can manage them. You can turn on and turn off. So you have also seen the invite link, so you can copy that one and email it to your students. You can also see the class codes and also the class view, so you can adjust the class view of your Google Classroom. So in the stream, students can post and comment is that you can also manage that one. So if you don't want that students can post then and comment, then you can turn it off. But if you want to, then you can turn it on. And then the Google Classroom or the classwork on the stream. So show attachment and details. So you can also control that one in your class settings. And also show deleted and also show deleted items. So if you turn it on, then it can show the deleted items, and if you can turn it off, then it will not. Another is at the grading setting. So you can see in the class setting, the grading setting. You can control everything in your Google Classroom as long as you are the one who are created this Google Classroom. So if you're just a student in the Google Classroom, then you don't have the power to change the class setting, because only the one who create the Google Classroom can edit the class setting and can open the class setting. So everything in the class setting can be edited depending on the teacher's wants and likes. So this is Janice Lisondra from the Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Mathematics, saying thank you for watching.